You made it. You made it. Isn't that wonderful? You're here. Come on in. It's time that we go to church because, like Fred Rogers, this is my neighborhood and I get to welcome you in. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood and you know that. So tell you what, let's say we go inside and have us some church, okay? And to help this get started, I'm going to invite our wonderful administrator, Laura Gustafson, to say a few words and get our announcements out there. And then we'll have Barbara Facelight our chalice. Come on, let's go inside.
Hello, and welcome to the weekly announcements. I am Laura Gustafson, your administrator. Journey to Membership is happening on February 28th and March 6th. If you are interested in becoming a member, please contact minister@vuu.org. The Environmental Action Team has a survey out and they would really like you to fill it out. If you could click on the link in Happenings and take a few minutes to do that, that would be wonderful. We have our directory coming out soon, so we need you to update your information. If you will send any updates and change of physical address, email address, or phone number to office1@vuu.org, it would be greatly appreciated. All other information on the weekly happenings is available at vuu.org by clicking the weekly happenings link. Have a wonderful day.
Good morning. My name is Barbara, and I'm honored to be the lay presence in our virtual pulpit today. Please join me in saying our chalice lighting blessing. You are invited to light your own chalice as I light mine. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice.
Good morning, everyone. I am Marcy Bodwin, your Director of Faith Formation Ministry here at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. If you have any children in your house, excuse me, now is the time to call them in front of your device because we're going to have time for all ages in just a minute. I do want to share with you a few last-minute announcements or changes. First of all, pastoral care, always there listening for you. Janet Cantley is your pastoral care associate this week. You can reach them via the email as shown on the screen, pastoralcare@vuu.org, or you can use the chat and you just click on the name in the message and you can type Janet in and it will pop it up for you. Remember that the chat is restricted during prayer, meditation, and the sermon. So post your chats and your joys and concerns before or after those parts. A couple of little announcements. First, I want to clarify, great to have Laura do our announcements this morning. When she said you should email office1@vuu.org, make sure you use the digit 1, office 1, not O-N-E, okay? Some of you may have seen the announcement that the VUU Jazz AZ coffee conversation scheduled for today has been canceled for this month. Ann Schneider wants you to know that she's recovering well from her surgery, but she's going to take this month off. So next meeting will be on March 21st at noon. After the worship service today, you will be given the opportunity to join a breakout room. Your prompt will be, have you ever made a mess that made things better? If you're new to VUU, you may want to choose to decline the breakout room in order to stay in a large group with Reverend Wooden. So our time for all ages today. This is a stunning debut picture book by actress Lupita Nyong'o, where she creates a whimsical and heartwarming story to inspire children to see their own unique beauty. Solwi has the skin, the color of midnight, and she's darker than everyone in her family. She's darker than anyone at school. Solwi just wants to be beautiful and bright like her mother and sister. And then a magical journey in the night sky opens her eyes and changes everything. This book is read to you by our own Beverly McCormick. You may need to turn the volume up a little bit on your device because the recording was a little quiet. Enjoy.
Sui, written by Lupita Nyong'o and illustrated by Vashti Harrison. Sui was born the color of midnight. She looked nothing like her family, not even a little, not even at all. Mama was the color of dawn, Baba the color of dust, and Mish, her sister, was the color of high noon. Hardly anyone at school looked like Sui either. People gave her sister Sui pet names like Sunshine and Ray and Beauty. People gave Sui names like Blackie and Darky and Night. Sui felt hurt every time, so she hid away while her sister made lots of friends. Sui dreamed of being the same color as her sister. She wanted real friends too. So she got the biggest eraser she could find and tried to rub off a layer or two of her darkness. Ooh, that hurt. She crept into Mama's room and helped herself to her makeup. Oh no, she would hear about that from Mama. Sui decided to work from the inside out and ate only the lightest, brightest foods. With a stomach ache, she went to bed early and turned to God for a miracle. Dear Lord, why do I look like midnight when my mother looks like dawn? Please make me as fair as the parents I'm from. I want to be beautiful, not just to pretend. I want to have daylight. I want to have friends. If you hear me, my Lord, and would like to comply, may I wake up as bright as the sun in the sky. Amen. When Mama came in to wake her for school the next morning, Sui rose to find not a trace of daylight in her midnight skin. Sui told Mama everything. Asked, "What is your name?" "Sui," she muttered. "And what does it mean?" "Star," Sui whispered. Brightness is not in your skin, my love. Brightness is just who you are. As for beauty, Mama said, rubbing Sui's stomach the way she always did to comfort her, you are beautiful. Beautiful to me, but you can't rely on what you look like to make you feel beautiful, my sweet. Real beauty comes from your mind and your heart. It begins with how you see yourself, not how others see you. Now, up you get and out you go. How could she, as dark as she was, have brightness in her? How could she have beauty when no one but her mother sees it? How could she be a star? That night, a shooting star appeared at Sui's window. "The night sent me," the star said. "Come with me." Sui hopped onto the star and off they went. "Long ago, at the beginning of time," said the star, "there was night and day, and they were sisters. They loved each other very much, but people didn't treat the sisters the same. People gave day pet names, lovely and nice and pretty. People gave night names like scary, bad, and ugly. She felt hurt every time. Well, night got fed up and walked right off the earth. Day stayed behind and enjoyed making everyone happy in the sun. But then, day grew too long. Day began to really miss her sister. So did everyone else. There had to be a way to get her back. Day set off to find night, and she did. "I miss you," said Day. "I miss you too," said Night. "But you don't know what it's like to be treated badly for being dark." You're right, I don't, Day replied. But what I do know is that we need you just the way you are. Come and see. Night returned, and the people rejoiced. We need the darkest nights to get the deepest rest. We need you so that we can grow and dream and keep our secrets to ourselves. The stars chimed in. Brightness isn't just for daylight. Light comes in all colors, and some light can only be seen in the dark. While day has a golden glow, with night everything has a silver sheen, elegant and fine. Older sister, when you are darkest is when you are most beautiful. It is when you are most you. Could it be that night did not need to change? Not even a little? Not even at all? Now that night and day were back together, a little bit of night returned to day in the form of shadows, and a little bit of day returned to night in the form of moonlight. They were inseparable from that moment on, and promised to celebrate the brightness in each other, whether people chose to see it or not. You see, the star explained, we need them both on their sunniest days and their darkest nights, and every shade in between. Together, they made the world we know, light and dark, strong and beautiful. Sui rose the next morning beaming. There would be no hiding anymore. She belonged out there in the world, dark and beautiful, bright and strong. And if you ever needed a reminder of her brightness, you could look up at the sky on the darkest night to see for yourself. Sui felt beautiful inside and out.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you, Beverly. Now join us in our first hymn. It's number 346 in our gray hymnal, if you have that. Come sing a song with me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and
Welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we are made whole by your presence. We want everyone to know that we're here for you, all of you. If you're new, if you're a longtime member, we're here for you. No matter your age or physical ability, no matter whom you love, no matter your religion of origin, or whether you believe in God. We're here for you, and wherever you are on your life's journey, we welcome you to this circle of love and community. Join us in keeping our hearts in a holy place and reveling in this beautiful day. Join us in remembering that as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We offer a special welcome to anyone who is new to us and curious about Unitarian Universalism and Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation and has chosen to join us this morning. We're so pleased you're here, and as Marcy said, we encourage you to stay after our service to chat. In our virtual pulpit today is our interim minister, the Reverend Dr. Fred Wooden. The title of his sermon is Keep Treading Water, which is his second sermon on the James Weldon Johnson literary rendering of the African American experience of the Bible. If you missed the first one last week, you can catch up by checking out our YouTube channel. Yeah, that's what I said. Did you know that we have a YouTube channel where we save videos of our services? Just navigate to YouTube and search for Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'll also put the link in the chat window. And our touchstones topic for this month is mercy. You can always find the link to this amazing UU journal on our VUU.org website. I enjoy it every month and look forward to it. If you haven't seen it before, check it out. There's something for everyone, including families and children. Now, while Reverend Wooden will provide an adult version of the Noah's Ark Bible story, I thought I'd add a little levity and share with you what I've been thinking about, because his topic reminded me of my favorite song from the 1960s by the folk group, the Irish Rovers. It's called The Unicorn Song, and it tells the story of the demise of the unicorn herd. The story goes like this. A long time ago, when the earth was still green and there were more kinds of animals than you've ever seen, they'd run around free while the earth was being born, but the loveliest of all was the unicorn. For example, there were green alligators and long-necked geese, humpty-backed camels and chimpanzees, cats and rats and elephants, but the loveliest of all was the unicorn. Now, God saw some sinning and it gave him pain, and he said, "Stand back, I'm going to make it rain." He said, "Hey, brother Noah, I'll tell you what to do. Build me a floating zoo, but don't forget my unicorn." And Noah was there to answer the call. He finished making the ark just as the rain started falling, and he marched in all the animals 2 by 2, and he called out as they went through, "Hey, Lord, I've got your alligators, geese, camels, and chimpanzees, cats and rats and elephants, but I'm so forlorn, I don't see the unicorn." So Noah looked out through the rain, and he saw them, the unicorn. They were hiding and playing games, kicking and splashing while the rain was pouring. Noah said, "Close the doors because the rain is pouring and we just can't wait for the unicorns." So the ark started moving, it drifted with the tide, and the unicorns looked up from the rocks and they cried, but the waters came down and sort of floated them away. And that's why you'll never see a unicorn to this very day. Well, as a teenager with a lively imagination, I was all focused on the unicorn. I felt sad that they had disobeyed and were then destroyed. Mind you, this was the 1960s, before the unicorn became ubiquitous and pink and sprouted wings. They were truly mythological, and hard to find, except by glassblowers at the Minnesota State Fair. So over the years, I amassed quite a collection of the fragile glass-blown beauties. I never believed they were only myth, and the pretty glass statues seemed to prove my theory that I would one day meet one in the real. So now I'm thinking about the role of the God in the song. The God notices behavior that is displeasing and decides to make it rain. Maybe for a good overall cleansing, we don't know. What we do know is that the decision causes God to inadvertently harm, even destroy a favored creature, an innocent. Interestingly, the God in the song doesn't predict how the unicorn will respond, and so doesn't create a safety net for creatures who don't make it to the ark in time. Instead, it's a snooze you lose world. Maybe the unicorn didn't speak the language of the notice Noah posted. Maybe their internet was down. Maybe their mail delivery was delayed. Maybe their demise was to no fault of their own. We do know that no mercy was shown to them. Both God and Noah concluded that it was their own fault that the waters came down and sort of floated them away because they were hiding and playing games. Noah seems regretful, but ultimately his choice is to shut the door with a shrug. Perhaps he sees himself as just following orders, helpless in the face of sure tragedy. My takeaway today is that we all have a choice to extend mercy, to extend compassion to others, even when it is in our power to punish or harm. But I know in my heart that ark is incomplete without the lovely unicorn. Thank you. Reverend Wooden, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Barbara. And it's time for our offering. And you see a slide there that shows you how to give today by text or at our website where you can send mail. But we're also closing in on the end of our annual pledge campaign. And if you haven't made a pledge for the whole year and you want to, maybe I can encourage you along with some words that I recorded earlier this week in another location. Hello, Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'm standing outside your third home, the one on Warner Road, and you can tell it's your former home because what's that up there? A giant flaming chalice. This is a purpose-built structure you did back in around 1983, 84, if I'm not mistaken. There's a picture of scene of Scotty Meek, your interim minister for a year, a great friend of mine, standing outside this building as it was being built. This was your home for almost a quarter of a century. And a lot of you who are now active remember it very well. You remember it as being vigorous and full of people because almost as soon as you moved in, it was too small. What a great legacy to be a community that even when it expands, is expanding faster than it imagined. I want to talk briefly about our financial campaign, our stewardship campaign, because there's still about 70 or 80 of folks who have given last year who haven't given yet. And that includes me. And I'm going to be making my pledge this week. I'm going to be pledging the average pledge for this congregation. So if you pledge above average, you're going to raise my pledge for me. But your pledge, in this case, is tied to this building in the same sense that what you give now makes the future possible. That future is yet to be decided, but it becomes larger and it becomes more possible by our commitments today. I am surely hoping that if you haven't made your annual commitment to support Valley UU, that you'll do so very soon, because that flame up there may not be the thing that's literally burning, but it truly is alive in our hearts and present now at Del Rio. And who knows, maybe your capital plans might include something that does that for the future as well as the past. I'm Fred Wooden, your interim minister, and I'm standing outside your former home, but a place that will ever be indicative of who you were and who you are and who you will be.
Don't know. Good morning, everyone. I guess I'm up. This is Sue Keen, your stewardship chair. And today I have good news and bad news. So I'll start with the good news. I made this slide yesterday, and since then we have gained about another $11,000 or $12,000 in pledges. We are over $350,000, and that is incredibly wonderful. We are so grateful for your giving and your loyalty and your willingness to sustain our joint community. The bad news is that the Finance Committee met this week and sort of projected a budget for the fiscal year that starts on July 1st. And if they don't give anybody on staff a raise, they still need, they think, $610,000 in order to break even. Now, if we all win the lottery, we might make it. But for those of you who haven't pledged, I'm urging you, please, to submit a pledge by going to vuu.org and clicking on the 2021 pledge link and filling it in. Now, for those of you who have already pledged and think that maybe, you can give up a Starbucks a couple times a week, or maybe going out to lunch once a week, or, something like that, and increase your pledge by a little bit, you please also go to vuu.org, click on 2021 pledge, and then just put in your name, and at the note space in the bottom, say, I want to increase my pledge by whatever it is that you want to increase it, and I will make the changes in the system. Our crack team of telephone people has already started contacting those who have not pledged, and expect to wrap that up Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. And if we don't hit something close to last year's total, which was $406,000, and I'd like, sort of like us to beat that, but we will be calling on all of us to make a little bit of sacrifice and pledge a little bit more so we can get closer to the amount that we need to break even in this pandemic and sustain our growth, our community, and our spiritual search. Thank you so much. Back to you, Reverend Wooden.
I invite Katie Seifert to lead us into the music that centers us at this point in our service.
Thank you, Fred. Yes, now is our time for centering, where we take the time to get present. I invite us all to take a breath, breathing in and out, closing our eyes and letting the background chatter in our minds fade and our bodies relax. Let's do one more deep breath, and on the exhale, release any tension or worry you may be carrying. Breathing in and out. Music was a way for slaves to express their feelings, whether it was sorrow, joy, inspiration, or hope. And their songs, both influenced by African and religious traditions, later formed the basis for what is known as African American or Negro spirituals. These songs were sung at contraband camps to help former slaves navigate that gray area between slavery and freedom. Every time I hear or sing these spirituals, I get chills. especially this song that I've chosen to center us. Perhaps because it connects me to the souls who created and sang these songs in such trying times. I can feel their emotions of sorrow and hope in just a few words wrapped within a glorious melody. As we get present to this morning, to this moment, and to the honoring of Black History this month, let's allow this song to speak to us. Please listen or sing along to Kristen Delaney's singing Nobody Knows the Troubles I've Seen.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. But glory, hallelujah. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. But glory, hallelujah. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. But glory, hallelujah. But glory, hallelujah.
It's a time to pray in a character very similar to what you've just heard. Anne Lamott said there are only three prayers: help, thanks, and wow. I think there's also oops, but this prayer is very simple, really. I've told you what it comes down to. Stop, stop, look, listen. Stop doing. Look around, outwardly and inwardly. Listen for what you're not hearing, but is out there. We pause here at the center of our worship, like a ball thrown up in the air that pauses in its arc before it returns to earth, like the place between inhale and exhale. And that's when you can notice the world, our lives, the known and the unknown are all here in that pause. There are no answers, but we hear the questions a little better. Then the ball begins to fall. We take the next breath. We walk the next step. And as we do, we remember just a little more that there are those whose breaths halt a bit, whose steps stumble more, who are dealing with pain, with fear, who struggle for hope. They are our friends, our neighbors, even our families, sometimes ourselves. Our prayer takes them in, known or unknown. Their hearts beat at the same pace as yours and mine. So we stop for them. We look for them. We listen for them. That is what it means to pray. Katie.
Thank you, Fred. Wade in the Water is another African American spiritual. In fact, you're going to be hearing several African American spirituals throughout the weeks to come. This one in particular, its lyrics have coded instructions to the enslaved escapees about how to avoid being recaptured. It suggests walking or wading in the water in order to hinder the dogs from capturing their scent of the enslaved escapees' chasers. The song is associated with Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, and Moses and the Israelites' escape from Egypt as depicted in Exodus in the Bible. The chorus also refers to John 5:4 in the Bible about the pool of Bathsheba, and quote, "For during a certain season an angel descended into the pool and stirred the water. Therefore he who first entered after the stirring of the water was made well from whatever disease he was held by at the time." End quote. Because of this song's history and references, this song is also frequently sung in the Black Baptist Church at baptisms, a ceremony using water as a symbol of cleansing one's sins. Together, let's sing or enjoy this hymnal, sung by Cynthia Liggins Thomas, singing Wade in the Water.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's a-gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. God's a-gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelite. God's a-gonna trouble the water. Ooh, wade in the water. Oh, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God is gonna trouble. God's a-gonna trouble the water. Oh, see that band all dressed in red. God's a-gonna trouble the water. Ooh, it looks like the band that Moses led. God's a-gonna trouble the water. Oh, whoa, 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 wade in the water. Oh, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God is gonna trouble, yes he will, the water. Oh, ooh, 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 oh, oh. God is gonna trouble. God's gonna trouble the water. There's healing in the water, yeah, 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 yeah. The water. Deliverance in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. My God is gonna trouble the water.
Maybe you can see the pulpit a little better from up close like this, with its flame. But I'm talking about water this week because I'm reading the second of James Weldon Johnson's poems, the collection of which is called God's Trombones. And I had to go someplace else to read it because if you're going to talk about waters, you better be near the water. So let's hear this poem from where I sat a few days ago. I'm up here at Indian Wash Park in Scottsdale, not far from where I live, which was created out of a floodplain. And since this week's reading from James Weldon Johnson is Noah built the ark, I thought I would come to a place where floods have happened. Doesn't look like much of a flood's happening today, but it has a lot of life here, trees, birds, even fish. So it seems to make sense to share this reading, this poem from God's Trombones here. Noah built the ark, and God was angry at the sins of men, and God got sorry that he ever made man. And he said, I will destroy him. I'll bring down judgment on him with a flood. I'll destroy everything on the face of the earth, man, beasts and birds and creeping things. And he did. Everything but the fishes. But Noah was a just and righteous man. Noah walked and talked with God, and one day God said to Noah, he said, Noah, build thee an ark. Build it out of gopher wood. Build it good and strong. Pitch it within and pitch it without, and build it according to the measurements that I will give to thee. Build it for you and all your house, and to save the seeds of life on earth, for I'm going to send down a mighty flood to destroy this wicked world. And Noah commenced to work on the ark. And he worked for about 100 years, and every day the crowd would come round and make fun of old man Noah. And they laughed and said to him, tell us, old man, when do you expect that sailboat to sail that boat up here amongst these hills? But Noah kept on a-working, and every once in a while old Noah would stop. He'd lay down his hammer and lay down his saw and take his staff in his hand, and with his long white beard a-flying in the wind, and the gospel light a-gleaming from his eye, old Noah would preach God's word. Sinners, oh sinners, repent, for the judgment is at hand. Sinners, oh sinners, repent, for the time is drawing nigh. God's wrath is gathering in the sky. God's going to rain down rain on rain. God's going to loosen up the bottom of the deep and drown this wicked world. Sinners, repent while yet there's time for God to change his mind. Some smart young fellow said, this old man's got water on the brain. And the crowd all laughed. Lord, but didn't they laugh? And they paid no mind to Noah, but kept on sinning just the same. One bright and sunny morning, not a cloud to be seen, God said to Noah, get thee in the ark. And Noah and his folks all got in the ark. All the animals, 2 by 2, a he and a she marched in. Then God said, Noah, bar the door. And Noah barred the door. And a little black spot began to spread like a bottle of ink, spilling over the sky. And the thunder rolled like a rumbling drum, and the lightning jumped from pole to pole. And it rained down rain, 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 great God, but didn't it rain? For 40 days and 40 nights, waters poured down and waters gushed up, and the dry land turned to sea. And the old ark, she began to ride. The old ark, she began to rock. Sinners came running down to the ark. They came a-swimming all around the ark. Sinners pleaded and sinners prayed. Sinners wept and sinners wailed. But Noah done barred the door. And the trees and the hills and the mountaintops slipped beneath the waters, and the old ark sailed that lonely sea. For 12 long months she sailed that sea, a sea without a shore. Then the waters began to settle down, and the ark touched bottom on the tallest peak of old Mount Ararat. The dove brought Noah the olive leaf, and Noah, when he saw the grass was green, opened the ark, and they all climbed down, the folks and the animals, 2 by 2, down from the mount to the valley. And Noah wept and fell on his face and hugged and kissed the dry ground. And then God hung out the rainbow across the sky, and he said to Noah, that's my sign. No more will I judge the world by flood. Next time, I'll rain down fire. Well, and that's only part of the poem. I cut out the part about why people sin, because we don't have all the time in the world. And we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. But it was fun to read that. And there are 5 more after that, and you'll be hearing them week by week, except for next week when we welcome one of our own people, Rebecca Rigg, as our guest speaker. But now let me talk about that poem, but I got to back up. I always have to back up to get a running start. Back in 2004, I had a very solemn day. I was still in my Brooklyn church at that point. It was a solemn day because on a day then in 2004, Captain Kangaroo Bob Keeshan died. And in his honor that day, I went out on my computer and I found the music, Puffing Billy, which always started his show. Blake, do we have a little bit of that music we could play? Oh, but I love that. Boy, you can, thank you, Blake. You notice how he opened the door, and I bet you Fred Rogers took that with him when he started up his program a few years later. Do I have a strong interest in children's television? You can tell, and in children's literature. I just think kids are the coolest. I was one once, and every time I see one, I remind myself of what great glory they bring to the world. But I'm going back to Captain Kangaroo now, because when I heard that music when I was a little boy, it meant that the captain and Mr. Moose and Grandfather Clock, Bunny Rabbit, and Mr. Green Jeans would be present in my life. And every now and then they'd invite others in as well. And my absolute favorite guest was a clown called the Banana Man. He would walk in with a huge coat and a bulbous nose, and he would, there he is, you can see him. And when he reached inside his coat, he would unfold all sorts of stuff. Blake, let's see just a little bit of, that's just the picture. If he reaches inside his coat, he'd pull out apples and bananas, of course, and oranges, and a mind-boggling watermelon that he appeared to produce from absolutely nowhere. Now, I want you to remember that picture, and I want you to remember Captain Kangaroo. So, Blake, we can say goodbye to the picture. Because you see, in some respects, the Banana Man is what I want to be. I want to walk out here on a Sunday basis and try to pull a watermelon out of my coat and have you go, ooh, ah. I want to astound you with some unlikely thing that will make you think in new ways. Fruit, however, is not what a preacher provides, at least not in the literal sense. But what I have found is that that book that we find so much trouble with as religious liberals, the Bible, is kind of like the Banana Man. When you look inside it, odd things can turn up. And no story is more full of odd things that you never really noticed before than the story of Noah and the ark. No matter how much you think you know it, there's something more buried inside it. If you look under the folds in the dusty creases, there's something lurking there that you hadn't noticed before. One of the reasons I like James Weldon Johnson's poems is that they help me see those things that I had never noticed. He tells that epic with an African-American vantage point, bringing the voice of what he called Negro sermon into the world for you and me to see. It may not seem different, the story, it's pretty much the same. It's embellished somewhat and a little emphatic in places, but one of the embellishments is like pulling back a curtain and seeing behind the story to something that was always there. In that story, he says, and a little black spot began to spread over the sky, like a little bottle of ink spilling over the sky. And I thought about what a great picture that was, because you can see it. You've seen that kind of thing happen when the rain comes, even in Arizona. You see a little black spot, a gray cloud, and as it comes closer, you can sense that it's bringing not just rain, but thunder and lightning. What a picture that paints. It's not in the original, but you can see it in your mind. And so for the first time, when I read that years ago, I stopped thinking about Noah and I started thinking about the flood itself. When you think of a flood, you think of a great torrent washing away everything. That's what they do. They wash things away. I've seen them, so have you, if not in person, certainly in movies or on television. Katrina was a big one, remember that? And Rita, we give names to floods when they come out of storms. The South Asian tsunami. When I lived in Massachusetts, the rivers would get swollen every spring when the ice melted. Sometimes they'd exceed the banks and we'd have to close some of the roads. The story says that God was sorry for having made people and decided to destroy it all with a flood. It had become corrupt with wickedness, and the flood would wash it all away and we'd start over. And that's in some ways when we begin to think of water as a kind of spiritual cleansing. It's not unique to Jews, of course, or to Christians. The Hindus bathe in the Ganges. Muslims wash their hands and feet and faces before they pray. But in Jewish law, this idea has another form. It's called the mikveh, the ritual bath. In fact, it is said that it's more important to build a ritual bath than building a synagogue, because the ritual of cleansing oneself is more important than the ritual of praying. Baptism, of course, is a knockoff of that. That's the Christian ritual that says it's supposed to make you spiritually clean, washing away sin and all. The word baptism actually means to wash. In Greek, it's simply wash. It's no wonder that the founder of Methodism, John Wesley, would be famous for saying later, cleanliness is next to godliness. And remember, he did that in the 18th century when getting clean was no easy trick. Good things, righteous things are clean, unblemished, spotless, they say, pure. Bad things, of course, are dirty, blemished, spotted, and impure. They need to be washed. That's what we think, and that's not an irrational thought. And so the flood washed away the bad, right? Well, I'm not sure. There's that line there in the poem. And a little black spot began to spread like a bottle of ink. It's a metaphor for a rain cloud, but instead of me thinking about water as cleanliness, I began to think about something else. Curious George. Yeah, I'm all about the kids. Do you remember the first book of Curious George? If you don't remember reading it as a kid, you probably remember reading it to a kid. That's the monkey from Cambridge, Massachusetts, actually brought back to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to entertain and teach kids how to behave. And it just so happens that in one episode, George decides to write like the man with the yellow hat, but he spills a bottle of ink on the floor. And afraid that he'll be caught, George decides to try to clean it up. And first he wipes it, then he washes it, but the stain keeps getting bigger and bigger. Here's a picture, you can see him. Look at him trying so hard to clean up after himself. And it climaxes when George brings the garden hose inside and pours detergent on it. And the result is a flood in the house with the furniture floating. And George is desperate to find a way to undo the flood he caused. I can't help but see a parallel between these two flood stories. Each is about trying to clean up some stain, right? In each, the main character, George or God, they both start with G after all, make a mistake and they try to fix it. God's flood is hardly a perfect answer. Witness the loss of the unicorn, for one thing. And why should animals pay for human sins? In essence, God goes way too far in fixing the error of human wickedness. The solution turns out not to be a solution after all. The ink is still on the floor, and even after they come off the ark, people are still wicked. It happens almost instantly. Now, you may not be comfortable with this analogy of God as a mischief-prone monkey, but I kind of like it, and I want to go a little further with it. Sometimes unlikely things have something original to offer. Many years ago, when we lived in a parsonage in rural Massachusetts, I had an old table I wanted to refinish. So I took it out into the front yard and I took it apart, and I got the steel wool and the stain, and not the stain, the paint remover, you know, that stuff, the stripper. That's what it's, stripper, yeah. And I stripped it down to the pale wood. And actually, I got almost done one day, and I stopped for the evening, and I made a mistake. I left the steel wool in the stripper overnight. So when I picked it up the next day and started stripping it again, I began to stain the surface, not strip it. Nothing I did, no stripping, no bleaching, would lift it out. No garden hoses, no floods. Whatever I did was irreparable. So what choice did I have? I had to stain the whole table. It went from being light brown to being very light brown to being almost mahogany colored. And you know, that's not what I wanted, but it actually came out a lot better, I think. I got a little extra stain, evened it out. I varnished it many times, and it looks fantastic, and I've kept it my whole life. I think the darkness brings out a certain depth. I think Lupita Nyong'o was right. But here's the point. My mistake improved things, even though I was trying to do something else entirely. I wanted it to be nice and clean and bright. What I got was dark and deep and rich, and that was better than my original plan. A little black spot began to spread like a bottle of ink spilling over the sky. In that tiny analogy, I find a large truth. There is no purity. There is no cleanliness in some cosmic sense. Nothing is ever washed clean, no matter how hard we try. Yes, God tried to start over, made a huge mess with the flood, and people were still bad after that. Curious George tried to clean up the ink and made a bigger mess, but was forgiven in the end. Neither God nor monkey can undo what has been done. In fact, to try to undo what has been done probably makes things worse. So maybe the flood isn't about cleanliness. And that made my mind go further. That's the weird part. You start with one thought, you go on to the next one. Maybe the meaning of the water is more complicated than washing up. And here's where it gets really crazy for you folks. This made me think of something in the New Testament, Christian scriptures. In that collection, Jesus says, one must be born of water and of spirit. And people in our fundamentalist communities and devout Christian communities think that means baptism. And maybe it does, but not only. Maybe you don't remember, but water is not just about baptism, it's about birth. People are born wet. You gestate in the womb surrounded by water which protects you. Every birth is preceded by a flood. Maybe the flood story is about rebirth, not about getting clean. Baptism is not about cleaning, it's about, like the man says, being reborn. You come out of the water. Water is a symbol of being born, of life. The flood does not mean cleanliness, it means birth. Now, that's the second thought. Now I'm going to get to a third thought, and it'll knock you over. It's not clean water when you're born. Do you know what amniotic fluid is? Raise your hand. It's fetal urine. And it surrounds you and protects you. The waste product of the forming child is its own protection in the womb. The fluid it pushes out as urine becomes the cushion that keeps it safe in the womb. And it's not just that. Babies, as they come close to birth, have to expand their lungs, and they do so by breathing in the amniotic fluid. That's how they learn to breathe, by taking in the amniotic fluid, their own urine, to expand their lungs. What an extraordinary thought. Maybe the flood was meant for us to expand our lungs, our capacities to breathe the world as it is. Maybe it is not about getting clean, it's about coming to life itself. That maybe the first creation wasn't enough, that we needed to do it again in this story to fully become the creatures we needed to be. The story of the flood is a story about the futility of perfection. No matter how much we try to clean up, there will always be something left that won't be clean enough. When Johnson says a little black spot began to spread, we are reminded that the floodwaters are themselves impure. We are born, we live, we die in a world that is blemished, impure, and stained, and that's the way it should be. Now, some folks, they can't stand this. They need purity, clarity, simplicity to function. I had a member of my first church who said, I grew up Unitarian Universalist, but I need absolutes. And I said, I don't have any. And I don't think there are any that we can grasp. He joined a fundamentalist church. He went where he needed to go. He shut off his mind to the complex, the difficult, the ambiguous, the impure, the imperfect. To them, and people like him, messiness is proof of corruption. So they call it sin and they wait on God to come and clean it up. But I'm telling you, this existence we have embraces the blemished, the impure, the stained, because there's nothing wrong with that. It is how life is supposed to be. Beneath the obvious meaning of the story that we all learned, there is something underneath the folds of the divine banana man's robe, telling us that the flood reminds us that we are born of waters, and that those waters fill us and cushion us. If we substitute that idea, then water makes so much more sense. The world was born and reborn. A person is born and reborn. Neither is pure, neither is clean, but each time it is new, as the spring flowers grow from the debris of dead flowers before them. In the story, God realized the mistake of trying to clean up life and promised never to do it again. The same applies to us. Stop trying to make life neat and clean. It isn't and it can't be. Instead of looking for arcs to hold you over the floods, for ways to escape the messy and turbulent facts of life, get out of the ark and get into the water. Learn to swim. We need to dive into the waters, the impure, unclean, honest realities of the living waters. You won't drown any more than a baby drowns in the womb. So there you have it. Out of the folds of the banana man's robe, a giant piece of nourishment from an old story. Sure, you can wait for an ark and hope that you grab the tip of Mount Ararat, but it's going to be a long wait. You won't get wet, you won't get messy, but you won't get anything else either. It's a long, boring wait. Or you can jump in, hold your nose, run off the cliff, land like a cannonball in the splashing waves of life. And it will take some courage to take that first gulp of the waters, but it can be done. The only question is, will you? If you ask my advice, though, given a choice between an ark and treading water, tread water. You'll be more alive. And that's all I got for you today. May these words find truth in your heart as they have found in mine. And may we find ever new ways to be present to the waters of life. Katie, will you help us sing our last hymn?
Absolutely. Our closing song includes various emotions, all within an upbeat, happy tune, suggesting that the experiences that move us from peace to pain, thus ending in strength, are all sung in the same melody. Life is a beautiful mess, isn't it? And we have the ability and power to hold peace, joy, love, tears, pain, and strength in it all. Please sing along and dance if you feel called to Peace Like a River, number 100 in our gray hymnal, if you have it.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
And now let's hear a few words as I leave this wonderful place. Words from Langston Hughes, the great African-American poet, who said, "I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like rivers. Feel the rivers in your blood, friend. The tides that wash back and forth, and dive in, for there is life for you and for me and for everyone." And now, Barbara, would you help us conclude our hour of worship by extinguishing the chalice?
Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. Now at this time, feel free to stay for a breakout room chat All you have to do is just accept the breakout room invitation when it appears. Or you can chat with Reverend Wooden and Nancy Nielsen by declining the breakout room invitation and staying in the main meeting. As a reminder, our conversation prompt today is, have you ever made a mess that made things better?